The plasma bolt missed Commander Kira's head by inches, scorching the metal wall behind her. She rolled behind a supply crate, her violet blood already soaking through her uniform. From 3 separate wounds, the screams of dying soldiers filled the air around her as the Zorathian forces pushed deeper into the command center. Her fleet was gone. 17 ships reduced to debris floating in the void. The orbital defense platforms had fallen silent 12 hours ago. Now the enemy was inside the capital city itself, and she was trapped in what should have been the most secure building on the planet. Kira checked her weapon. 5 shots left. Maybe 6 if the power cell held. Against the 30 Zorathian shock troops advancing through the corridor, it meant nothing. Her communication device crackled with desperate calls from units across the city, all falling back, all requesting support she couldn't provide. The war had lasted 3 years. 3 long years of watching the Zorathian Empire consume world after world, species after species. Her people, the Valarans, had been the last significant resistance in this sector. Now they were hours away from extinction. A shadow moved across the doorway. Kira fired twice, dropping 1 attacker. 4 shots remaining. She pressed her back against the crate and tried to think. There had to be a way out. Some strategy she hadn't considered. But her tactical mind, trained over 20 years of military service, came up empty. The Zorathians were too strong, too numerous, too advanced. She heard them setting up outside the room. They were preparing for a final assault. Grenades, probably. Or maybe they would just collapse the building. Either way, she had minutes left at best. Footsteps approached from behind her. Kira spun, weapon raised, then froze. A figure stood in the secondary entrance. But it wasn't a Zorathian. It wasn't even a Velaron. The creature was strange, standing upright on 2 legs with pale skin and short dark hair. It wore simple civilian clothing and carried no visible weapons. The alien looked at her with eyes that held something she hadn't seen in weeks. Not fear. Not desperation. Something else entirely. "You're the commander," the strange being said in perfect Velaran, its voice calm despite the chaos. "I saw your broadcast yesterday, the one asking for anyone with military experience to report to defense stations." Kira coughed, tasting blood. "The defense stations are destroyed. Everyone's dead or dying. You should run while you can." The alien stepped closer, and Kira noticed details she'd missed before. Solid build, confident posture, scars on the hands. This wasn't some random civilian. The being moved, like a soldier. "I'm not running," the alien said. "My name is Jake Collins. I'm human, and I'm here to fight." Kira had never heard of humans before. Some refugee species, probably, seeking shelter before the war reached their home. She started to tell him this was pointless, that fighting now meant nothing but death. Then the wall exploded inward, and 3 Zorathian soldiers burst through the smoke. Jake moved faster than any being she'd ever seen. He crossed the distance to the nearest Zorathian in a blink, grabbed the soldier's weapon, twisted it free, and fired in one smooth motion. The Zorathian dropped. The second soldier turned his rifle toward Jake, but the human had already moved, using the first body as a shield while firing around it. 2 shots, 2 kills. The room fell silent except for the crackling of damaged electronics. Kira stared at the human, her mind struggling to process what she'd just witnessed. Jake checked the captured weapon, ejected the power cell, slapped in a fresh one from the dead soldier's belt, and turned to face her. "So, Commander," Jake said, that strange look still in his eyes. "What's the plan?" The attack lasted 18 hours. Kira never left the command center, coordinating what remained of her forces, while Jake Collins did the impossible. He moved through the building like death itself, clearing room after room of Zorathian soldiers. Within the first hour, he'd killed 40 enemy fighters. By the third hour, that number had doubled. Kira watched through security feeds as Jake adapted to each situation with terrifying efficiency. When the Zorathians sent armored units, he used their own explosives against them. When they deployed energy shields, he found angles they couldn't cover. When they tried to flank him, he anticipated their movements and set traps that turned corridors into killing zones. The human never seemed to tire. He reloaded weapons while running, assessed tactical situations in seconds, and executed maneuvers that would take her soldiers hours of planning to attempt. Most disturbing of all, he did it without hesitation, without fear, without any visible emotion beyond cold focus. Lieutenant Vera, one of the few surviving officers, limped into the command center with a field report. "Commander, I don't understand what's happening. The Zorathians are pulling back from sectors 7 through 12. They're abandoning positions they secured hours ago." Kira pulled up a tactical map. Vera was right. The enemy was retreating, consolidating their forces. But why? They had overwhelming numbers and firepower. They should be pushing forward, finishing the conquest. Then she saw it. Every sector where the Zorathians had withdrawn was a sector where Jake had been active. They weren't retreating from her forces. They were retreating from him. A single individual was causing the enemy to reconsider their assault strategy. Her communication device crackled. "Commander Kira, this is Captain Vaughn. We've retaken the Western Defense Platform. I repeat, the platform is back in our hands." More reports flooded in. Enemy forces withdrawing from the water treatment facility. Zorathian positions at the transportation hub going silent. Each piece of news was impossible, yet happening. The tide was shifting, and Kira knew it centered on one being. She pulled up the security feed, showing Jake's current position. He was in the lower levels now, where the heaviest fighting had been. Bodies littered the corridor behind him, all wearing Zorathian armor. As she watched, he encountered a squad of 6 enemy soldiers. The fight lasted less than 30 seconds. Jake emerged without a scratch. A priority message interrupted her thoughts. It was from the Zorathian flagship in orbit. They were requesting a channel to the Veleron command. Kira's hand trembled as she opened the connection. Requesting communication during an active assault was unheard of. The Zorathian commander appeared on screen, his reptilian features twisted with something that looked almost like concern. "Commander Kira of the Veleron Defense Forces, I am General Thax of the Zorathian Third Fleet. I wish to discuss terms." Kira blinked. "Terms? A temporary ceasefire," Thax said. His voice was steady, but his eyes kept darting to something off-screen. 12 hours. "I need to speak with my superiors before proceeding with this engagement." "You've been bombarding our planet for 3 years," Kira said slowly. "You've never requested a ceasefire before. Why now?" Thax was silent for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was quieter. "What is that thing you've deployed? What species creates warriors like that?" Kira understood then. The Zorathian Empire, which had conquered 40 worlds in the last decade, was afraid. Not of her forces, not of her weapons, but of Jake Collins. One human had accomplished what fleets and armies couldn't. He'd made the enemy question their victory. "That's a human," Kira said, keeping her voice neutral. "And he's not deployed by us." He volunteered. Thax's expression shifted to something that might have been disbelief. "One of your civilians did this? By choice? He's not our civilian. Humans aren't from our world. They're refugees who settled here 2 years ago. About 500 of them. I think." The general's scales seemed to pale. 500. And if one can do this, then... He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. Kira felt something she hadn't felt in months, beginning to grow in her chest. Not quite hope, but something close to it. "I'll grant your ceasefire," Kira said. 12 hours. Starting now. But General Thax, I want something in return for this time. Name it. Tell me about humans. Your intelligence network is vast. If they're in your databases, I want every file you have on them. Thax nodded slowly. I'll transmit what we have. But Commander, a word of advice. If you have humans on your world, if they've chosen to fight for you, then you have something more valuable than any weapon in our arsenal. My recommendation to my superiors will be immediate withdrawal from this system. The channel closed. Kira sat back in her chair, wincing at the pain from her wounds. Vera stared at the blank screen, confusion clear on her face. Commander, I don't understand. We're losing. Why would they withdraw? Kira pulled up the security feed again. Jake was climbing stairs now, heading toward their position. He moved with the same tireless efficiency, checking corners, scanning for threats. Behind him lay a trail of victory that shouldn't have been possible. Because, Lieutenant, Kira said softly, they just learned something that changed everything. They learned that humans don't just fight to survive. They fight to win. The data files from the Zorathian fleet began downloading to her terminal. Kira opened the first one, her eyes widening as she read. The files contained incident reports, battle analyses, and intelligence briefings spanning decades. Every one featured the same word in the title: human. According to Zorathian records, humans came from a world they designated as Terra, located in a distant spiral arm of the galaxy. The Zorathians had encountered them 3 times in the last 50 years. Each encounter had been a disaster. The first contact happened when a Zorathian survey ship discovered a small human colony on an ice world. The colony had no defenses, no military, just civilians mining rare minerals. When the Zorathians attempted to establish dominance, as they did with all primitive species, the humans refused to submit. What followed was a 6-month siege, where 300 colonists held off an entire battalion. The Zorathians eventually withdrew after losing more soldiers than they'd lost in the previous 5 conquests combined. The second encounter involved a human merchant vessel. When Zorathian pirates tried to board it, the crew of 20 turned the ship into a fortress. The pirates had superior numbers and weapons, but the humans used the ship's systems in ways no one had imagined possible. They vented atmosphere to create vacuum traps, overloaded engines to generate electromagnetic pulses, and even weaponized the cargo hold's loading mechanisms. By the time reinforcements arrived, the human crew had captured the pirate flagship. The third encounter never became a full conflict, because the Zorathian commander withdrew his forces after preliminary scans. The report was marked with the highest warning level. The Zorathians had found the human homeworld, Terra, and conducted surveillance for 3 months. What they discovered made them classify humans as a species to avoid at all costs. Kira read the summary with growing amazement. Terra was a death world, a planet where almost everything could kill you. Extreme weather, dangerous predators, toxic plants, and natural disasters were common. Humans had evolved not just to survive this environment, but to thrive in it. Their bodies were dense with muscle, their bones nearly unbreakable, their endurance legendary. They healed from injuries that would kill most species. They could go days without sleep, weeks without proper food, and still function effectively. But the physical capabilities were only part of what made humans dangerous. The psychological profile was what truly concerned the Zorathians. Humans possessed something the report called persistence hunting behavior. When they selected a target, they didn't stop. Not when tired, not when injured, not when facing overwhelming odds. They simply kept coming until either they won or they died. Combined with their pattern recognition abilities and their capacity for rapid tactical adaptation, it made them terrifying opponents. The file included a quote from a Zorathian xenobiologist. Humans are what happens when evolution decides to create a species that refuses to accept defeat. They don't just fight. They fight smart, and they never stop learning. Kira looked up from the terminal as Jake entered the command center. His clothes were torn and stained with violet Zorathian blood. He carried 3 different weapons, all taken from enemies. Despite having been in combat for nearly a day straight, he showed no signs of fatigue. The lower levels are secure, Jake reported. I counted 68 hostiles down there, all neutralized. I also found 4 of your soldiers trapped in a collapsed section. They're injured but alive. Medics are with them now. Vera stepped forward, her voice hesitant. How are you still standing? You've been fighting non-stop for 18 hours. Jake shrugged. I've done longer. Besides, the adrenaline helps. And knowing that people need help, that keeps you going. Where did you learn to fight like that? Kira asked. I was a soldier back on Terra, Jake said. Marine Corps. Special Operations. Did 3 tours in various conflicts before my unit was assigned to colony security. When the colony ship left Terra, about 500 of us came along to make sure the civilians stayed safe during the journey. We ended up here when our ship had engine trouble. Your people took us in, gave us homes, treated us like neighbors. So when the war came, it seemed wrong to just hide while you fought alone. But you did hide, Vera said. For 3 years, humans stayed out of the fighting. Why wait until now? Jake's expression grew somber. Because we were trying to respect your sovereignty. This is your world, your war. We didn't want to interfere or take over your fight. But then yesterday, I saw Commander Kira's broadcast. I saw her face, saw how exhausted she was, how desperate. And I realized, we'd been thinking about this wrong. This isn't about sovereignty or pride. It's about survival, your survival. And we could help with that. He looked directly at Kira. I came alone because I wanted to see if one person could make a difference. If I could help turn the tide even slightly, then I'd know the others could too. And if I died trying, well, at least it would be for something that mattered. Kira stood, ignoring the pain from her wounds. How many others are there? How many humans like you, on this planet? About 470 now. Some died during the initial attacks, but most are still alive, still scattered across the city in shelters. About 200 have military training like me. The rest are civilians, but even they know basic combat skills. Terra required it, and if I asked them to fight, would they? Jake smiled, and it was a smile that held no humor, only grim determination. Commander, you saved us when our ship failed. You gave us homes when we had nowhere else to go. You treated us with kindness and respect when you could have turned us away. If you ask humans to fight for you, you won't have to ask twice. Every single one of us will answer that call. The communication console lit up with an incoming message. It was from General Thax again. Kira accepted the connection, noting that the Zorathian general looked even more unsettled than before. Commander Kira, I've received my orders from the Zorathian High Command, Thax said without preamble. We are withdrawing all forces from your system. Effective immediately. The orbital blockade will be lifted within 6 hours. Ground forces will evacuate within 12. This conflict is over. Farmer, Vera gasped. Kira felt her heart skip a beat. Just like that? After 3 years of war? You're leaving? The High Command reviewed the data I sent them, Thax said. They also reviewed the historical files on humans. The consensus was unanimous. Continuing this war is not worth the cost. Not when your world has humans willing to fight for it. He paused, then added, For what it's worth, Commander, you fought well. Your people showed remarkable courage against impossible odds. But I must tell you something. If that human had not appeared when he did, you would have fallen. We had you beaten. But now, with humans involved, the entire strategic calculation has changed. We could win, eventually, but the price would be catastrophic. The High Command doesn't believe any world is worth fighting humans for. So you're afraid of them, Kira said. Terrified, Thax admitted without shame. And anyone with sense would be. Consider yourself fortunate, Commander. Most species only learn about human capabilities when it's too late. You discovered them while they were on your side. The channel closed. The command center erupted in cheers. Soldiers who had been preparing to die were suddenly celebrating victory. Vera grabbed Kira's arm, laughing and crying at the same time. But Kira kept her eyes on Jake, who stood quietly by the wall, watching the celebration with a slight smile. She walked over to him, moving carefully because of her injuries. You knew this would happen. You knew that once you showed what humans could do, the Zorathians would retreat. I hoped. Jake corrected. I've seen what happens when people realize what humans are capable of in combat. Sometimes, they back down. Sometimes, they escalate. I gambled that the Zorathians were smart enough to choose the first option. And if they'd chosen escalation, Jake's smile faded. Then, the other 469 humans on this planet would have shown them why that was a mistake. We might not have won, but we would have made them regret ever coming here. Kira studied him for a long moment. This being who looked so similar to her own people in basic form, yet was so fundamentally different in capability. Jake Collins, I need to ask you something. And I need complete honesty. Always. Are all humans like you? Are they all as capable in combat? It's not Dodd. Krant for Ma. Are all humans? Jake considered the question. The ones with military training, yes. The civilians are less skilled, but still dangerous if pushed. Humans have this thing we call a fight or flight response. When threatened, we either run or we fight. But here's the thing about humans. Commander, most species have a strong flight instinct. When things get bad enough, they run. Humans have that instinct too, but we also have something else. Something that sometimes overrides the flight response. What's that? Spite, Jake said simply. Pure, stubborn, unreasonable spite. Sometimes, when things get really bad, when the situation seems hopeless and running would be the smart choice, humans look at the threat and say no. Not because we think we can win, but because we refuse to lose. We fight, not because victory is likely, but because giving up is unacceptable. It's not logical. It's not always smart, but it's deeply human. He gestured around the command center. You were losing, Commander. Everyone knew it. The logical choice would have been to surrender, to save whatever lives you could. But you didn't do that. You kept fighting even when it was hopeless. That's why I came to help. Because I recognized that stubbornness, that refusal to quit. You fought like a human. So I figured the least I could do was fight beside you. Kira felt something shift in her understanding. For 3 years, she'd thought her people were alone in their struggle. She'd believed they were the last ones willing to stand against the Zorathian Empire. But she'd been wrong. They hadn't been alone. They'd had humans living among them, waiting for the moment when they were needed most. I want to meet the others, Kira said. All of them. I want to thank them personally for what you've done today. Jake nodded. I'll arrange it. But Commander, I need you to understand something. What I did today wasn't special by human standards. It was just a soldier doing his job. Every other human on this planet would have done the same if they'd been in my position. We're not heroes. We're just people who pay our debts and protect our neighbors. A medic arrived to treat Kira's wounds. As they worked, she continued talking to Jake, learning more about humans and their strange world. She learned about Terra's oceans that could swallow continents, about storms that could level cities, about predators that made Zorathian shock troops look like prey animals. She learned about human history, about how they'd fought each other for thousands of years before finally learning to work together, about how they'd nearly destroyed themselves multiple times but always pulled back from the brink. Most importantly, she learned why humans had left Terra in the first place. They'd sent out colony ships, not because they had to, but because they wanted to. Because humans looked at the vast, dangerous galaxy and saw not a threat, but an opportunity. Because they believed that somewhere out there, they'd find other species to befriend, to trade with, to learn from. We're explorers at heart, Jake explained. Yes, we can fight. Yes, we're dangerous when we need to be. But that's not what we want to be. We want to build things, create things, discover things. The capacity for violence is just a tool we developed to survive long enough to do the things we actually care about. By the time the medic finished, Kira had made several decisions. The first was to formally request that all humans on the planet be granted full citizenship and military commendations. The second was to send a message to the Veleron High Council recommending the establishment of formal diplomatic relations with Terra. The third was to ensure that what happened today was recorded accurately so that future generations would know the truth. She was losing the war. The Zorathians had beaten her fleet, conquered her cities, and were hours away from final victory. Then a human in the crowd stood up to fight. And everything changed. Not because humans were invincible, but because they were exactly what the galaxy needed. People who refused to give up, who fought for their friends, and who turned the tide when it mattered most. The war wasn't over yet. The Zorathians might withdraw from this system, but they still controlled dozens of other worlds. Other species were still suffering under their rule. But now Kira knew something she hadn't known before. Humanity existed. And if even a fraction of them were like Jake Collins, then the Zorathian Empire's days were numbered. She looked at Jake, who was checking his captured weapons with the careful attention of a professional. When this is over, when the Zorathians are gone and we've rebuilt, I want you to help me with something. What's that? I want to find the other species the Zorathians have conquered. And I want to introduce them to humanity. Because I think the galaxy needs to know that there's a species out there that doesn't accept defeat, that fights for their friends, and that turns impossible situations into victories. Jake smiled, and this time there was warmth in it. I think my people would like that, Commander. We've been wandering the stars, looking for friends. Maybe it's time we found some and showed them what humans do best, which is, we fight for those who can't fight for themselves. And we never, ever give up. The next morning, Kira stood on the steps of the command center watching the Zorathian ships depart from orbit. True to General Thax's word, they were leaving. The 3-year-long siege was ending not with a final desperate battle, but with the enemy's retreat. Buildings were damaged, infrastructure was destroyed, and thousands had died. But they had survived. They had won. Jake stood beside her, along with 12 other humans who had arrived during the night. They were a diverse group, different ages and backgrounds, but all shared the same quiet confidence Jake possessed. These were the ones with military training, the veterans and soldiers who had come when called. This is Captain Lisa Monroe, Jake said, introducing a woman with short blonde hair and alert blue eyes. She commanded the security detail on our colony ship. These others are from various units and specialties. When I contacted them last night and told them what happened, they wanted to help with whatever comes next. Lisa stepped forward and saluted Kira with crisp, military precision. Commander, my people are ready to assist with securing the city, locating any remaining Zorathian forces, and helping with reconstruction. We're also prepared to provide training to your soldiers if you want to learn human combat techniques. Kira returned the salute. All of that would be appreciated, Captain Monroe. But first, I have a question. Jake told me that there are about 470 humans on this planet. He said that if I asked them to fight, they would answer. I need to know if that was true. I need to know if that was true. Lisa exchanged glances with the other humans. Something passed between them. Some unspoken communication. Then, she turned back to Kira, with a slight smile. Commander, Jake undersold it. He told you we'd answer if you asked. The truth is, you don't even need to ask. We heard what happened yesterday. We heard that one of ours went to fight for you and that it made a difference. Right now, Every human on this planet is packing their things and getting ready to report for duty. Not because anyone ordered them to, because that's what humans do. When our friends are in trouble, we help. When there's a fight that needs fighting, we show up. She gestured to the others behind her. These 12 are just the advance group. By this evening, you'll have 200 trained fighters ready for deployment. By tomorrow, you'll have 470 volunteers, all asking what they can do to help rebuild and defend this world. You saved us when we needed saving. Now, we're returning the favor. Kira felt her throat tighten with emotion. 3 years of war had taught her not to trust in easy victories or simple solutions. But looking at these humans, seeing the determination in their eyes, she allowed herself to feel something dangerous. Hope, there's something else you should know, Jake said quietly. Last night, I sent a message to Terra, told them what happened here, what the Zorathians did, and how we helped stop them. It'll take months for the message to reach home, and months more for any response. But when Terra learns that humans on a distant colony helped save an entire species from conquest, they'll want to know more. They'll send diplomats, probably military advisors, maybe even support ships. He looked directly at Kira. What I'm saying is, this isn't just about the 470 humans on your planet anymore. You've made friends with humanity as a whole. And humans don't forget their friends. A communication officer rushed out from the command center. Commander Kira, you need to see this. We're receiving transmissions from other systems, other worlds that the Zorathians conquered. They heard about what happened here. They're asking for details. They want to know how we won. Kira turned to Jake with raised eyebrows. How did they hear about it so fast? The Zorathians probably told them, Lisa said. When you humiliate an empire this badly, word spreads fast. Every species under Zorathian control now knows that one of their conquered worlds successfully drove off the fleet. They'll want to know how, and when they learn that humans were involved, they'll want to find humans of their own. The communication officer continued. There's more, Commander. We're receiving a priority transmission from the Velaron High Council. They want a full report on the human involvement in yesterday's battle, and they're asking if the humans would be willing to advise other Velaron military units. Kira looked at the assembled humans. 13 people, refugees from a distant world, had somehow become the most important military asset in the sector. It was absurd. It was impossible. It was the strangest thing she'd experienced in her entire career. And yet, it was happening. Before I respond to any of these messages, Kira said, I need to understand something. Jake, you said humans fight for their friends. You said you protect your neighbors. But what happens when this is over? What happens when the immediate danger passes, and we're just another species trying to rebuild? Will humans still be interested in helping us? Jake smiled. Commander, humans are loyal to a fault. Once we decide someone is our friend, we stick with them. Through good times and bad, through peace and war. You took us in when we needed help. You treated us with respect and kindness. That makes you friends for life. So yes, we'll still be interested in helping. Not just with military matters, but with everything. Rebuilding cities, establishing trade routes, sharing technology. Whatever you need. He paused, then added. Besides, we like you. You and your people remind us of ourselves. Stubborn, brave, and too foolish to know when you're beaten. Those are qualities humans respect. Lisa stepped forward. If I may, Commander, I'd like to propose something. Let us train a group of your soldiers in human combat techniques, not to replace your existing military doctrine, but to supplement it. Teach them how we think tactically, how we adapt to changing situations, how we use unconventional approaches to solve problems. Then, when other worlds ask how you defeated the Zorathians, you can tell them it was a combination of Velaron courage and human methods. You can share that knowledge freely. You'd give away your military secrets? Kira asked, surprised. They're not secrets. Lisa said. They're skills anyone can learn with proper training. And honestly, the galaxy would be a better place if more species knew how to defend themselves effectively. The Zorathians have been able to conquer so many worlds because most species aren't prepared for sustained military conflict. If we can change that, if we can help others become more capable of self-defense, then maybe empires, like the Zorathians, will think twice before attacking. Kira considered this. It was a long-term vision, a plan that went far beyond just surviving the next battle. It was thinking like a species that expected to be around for a long time, that wanted to build something lasting. It was thinking like humans apparently thought. All right, Kira said. I accept your offer. Train our soldiers. Share your knowledge. Help us rebuild and prepare for whatever comes next. In return, I'll make sure the Velaran High Council understands exactly what humanity did for us. I'll make sure they know that we owe you more than we can ever repay. You don't owe us anything, Jake said firmly. You already paid any debt when you took us in. Everything else is just neighbors helping neighbors. The ruins of the capital city stretched out before them, damaged but not destroyed. In the distance, Kira could see her people emerging from shelters, beginning the long process of recovery. They would rebuild. They would survive. And now, they would do it with human friends standing beside them. A thought occurred to her. Jake, you said Terra sent out colony ships to explore and find other species. How many ships did they send? 3. 3. Last I heard, about 30. Each one carrying around 500 to 1,000 people. They went in all different directions, looking for habitable worlds and friendly aliens. So there are potentially 30,000 humans scattered across the galaxy, all looking to make friends and establish colonies. More or less. Some ships might have been lost. Others might have turned back. But yeah, there are a lot of humans out there. Exploring, Kira thought about that. 30,000 humans, all with the same fighting spirit Jake had shown, all potentially willing to help defend their adopted homes against threats like the Zorathians. It was a resource the galaxy didn't know it had, a force that could change the balance of power across entire sectors. The Zorathians are going to realize their mistake eventually, Kira said. They're going to figure out that by attacking worlds where humans live, they've created a network of enemies scattered across the galaxy. Enemies who know how to fight, who refuse to give up, and who will protect their friends. Lisa grinned. Let them figure it out. By the time they do, it'll be too late. Every colony ship will have found a home. Every group of humans will have made friends with local species. And every single one of those groups will remember what happened here. They'll remember that when one world stood up to the Zorathians with human help, the Empire backed down. That's a powerful precedent. It's more than that, Jake added. It's a message to the Zorathians and any other empire thinking about conquest. The message is simple. If you attack our friends, you're attacking us. And humans don't lose fights we care about. We might not win immediately. We might take losses. But we'll keep coming back until either we win or we're all dead. And since we're really hard to kill, the smart money is on us winning eventually. A junior officer approached with another update. Commander, the Zorathian ground forces are withdrawing faster than expected. They're leaving behind equipment, supplies, everything. It's like they can't get off this planet fast enough. Kira wasn't surprised. Once an army loses the will to fight, retreat becomes a rout. The Zorathians had come here expecting an easy conquest. Instead, they'd found something that terrified them. Now they were running. And every moment they spent on this world was a moment they feared another encounter with humans. Secure whatever they leave behind, Kira ordered. We'll need those supplies for reconstruction. And set up perimeter guards in case they try to come back. As the officer left, Kira turned back to the humans. I want to thank you all personally. Not just for yesterday, but for what you represent. For 3 years, my people fought alone. We thought we were the last ones standing against the Zorathian expansion. Learning that we weren't alone, that there were others willing to fight beside us, that changes everything. You were never alone, Jake said. You just didn't know it yet. But now you do. And so does everyone else in the galaxy who's paying attention. The war isn't over, Commander. The Zorathians still control dozens of worlds. But what happened here shows that they can be beaten. That's going to inspire others to resist. And when they do, they'll look for humans to help them, just like you did. He was right, Kira realized. This wasn't just about her world anymore. It was about something larger. A shift in the balance of power. A change in how species interacted across the galaxy. The Zorathian Empire had seemed unstoppable because no one had found a way to effectively resist them. Now, that way had been found. And it had a name. Humanity. The morning sun climbed higher in the sky, casting long shadows across the damaged city. Kira watched her people working, clearing debris, helping the injured, beginning the long road to recovery. And standing among them were humans, already pitching in without being asked, lifting heavy objects with their dense muscles, working with the tireless energy that seemed to characterize their species. She thought about the future, about the other colony, ships full of humans scattered across the galaxy, about how each one represented a potential turning point for whatever world they'd settled on, about how humanity's presence might change the destiny of dozens of species, hundreds of worlds. The Zorathians had made a critical error. They'd attacked a world where humans lived, and they'd learned the hard way what that meant. But they'd also taught everyone else an important lesson. Having human friends meant having allies who would stand with you against impossible odds, who would fight when fighting seemed pointless, and who would never accept defeat. Kira had been losing the war. Her fleet destroyed, her cities under siege, her people hours from extinction. Then, a human in the crowd stood up to fight, and the impossible became possible. The inevitable became avoidable. The end became a new beginning. And across the galaxy, on 30 other worlds, thousands of other humans were hearing this story and making their own decisions about what it meant, about who they would stand with, who they would fight for, and what they were willing to risk for their adopted homes. The war was far from over. But for the first time in 3 years, Kira believed they could win it. Not just survive, but actually win. Because now, they had something they didn't have before. They had humans. And humans never gave up.